Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about Astellia Online in 2019. Now, this is a game that you might have heard about before on YouTube. There's quite a few YouTubers who have taken a look at it already. It was released fairly recently in the West and has had both positive and negative reviews. It seems like people are either very for it or very against it, which is kind of fair, but they had a free weekend recently and I was like, hey, I like trying out new MMOs, so let's, see what's up. There's no harm in trying something that was free. So we first go in and we get to take a look at all of the classes that we get to choose from. We have the traditional warrior, assassin, archer, scholar, which is a little bit more hybrid, and mage. It is a Holy Trinity MMO, and it does a lot of things how you would expect a Holy Trinity MMO to do. There's tap targeting, fairly standard combat, if not a little bit lackluster. The biggest thing are the Astels, and those are kind of little companions that fight with you, but we'll get more into that as we introduce them. Talking about the classes though, one of the first things that I noticed was that there was a advanced class or a secondary branching class system, which, if you know anything about me, is one of my favorite things in MMOs. Looking back at different games like MapleStory or Dragon's Nest and any of those things, I really enjoy class systems that have branching class trees. I think it's a really fun way to feel unique in the game, and particularly I really enjoy it when the decision is quite impactful to your gameplay. Now, the negative aspect to this is that there usually are quite a few of these secondary classes that are either really powerful or really underpowered, and only a few of them end up getting played, but that's not the scope of this video. And realistically, I don't get to play around with this too much in the video. That's more suited for someone who's got a full review probably, whereas this is really focused on a first impressions. So we are in the character creator. One other thing I did want to mention that I didn't love is that there are some classes that appear to be gender locked, which I don't know. It just sucks seeing that in this day and age. Like, it's why make it so you have to play a female character for certain classes? I don't get it. And it was, from what I saw, there was only a few classes that you had to play a female character, but there weren't any male specific classes, and it was, you'd kind of assume there'd be one of each or something, but it was interesting anyways. So yeah, you have a fairly usual set of character customization tools where you can make yourself look as weird or as pretty or as crazy as you like. I tend to go very simple when I'm making my characters. I don't know what it means. I always kind of make a very generic looking character each time, and I think what I'd love to do one day is just take sort of a screenshot of the first character I make in every MMO and sort of overlay them and see how similarly I choose, because I feel like there's a very set style that I go for, specifically with the type of class, and I'd love to see if there was any kind of relationship there, if there was a very specific style I choose when I'm going for more of a stealthy character or when I'm going as a caster or something, but whatever. So we're going into the game and we get this nice pretty cutscenes. One of the big things I actually have to give the game is that they had really nice cutscenes. They were very good. They were like pre-rendered, and because of that, the cutscenes themselves had like no frame drops or anything like that, whereas a lot of the other parts of the game ended up having frame drops. They were also really good graphic quality. So in a lot of ways, the cutscenes ended up making some of the rest of the game feel a lot worse because of how pretty they were. But it is nice because it does sort of engage you more with some of the story. Now, we're going to play through a tutorial sort of area, and you do have the option to escape this tutorial area, which is the best of both worlds in my mind. I'm a big fan of games having a tutorial area, specifically for the first time through, because I feel like a lot of people, specifically in MMOs, where it can take quite a long time to do anything interesting, need to be exposed to the interesting side of the game. There is something to be said for the more classic MMOs where you have to know right away that it's going to be a grind, that you have to do some less exciting things to begin. But I'm definitely someone who enjoys being tossed into the adventure and really seeing what's going on right away. So I do definitely enjoy that. I don't think the tutorial itself is spectacularly interesting or anything like that, but it does introduce you to some of the core mechanics. Once again, the Astels will get there quite soon, but also the gameplay. And you'll notice that I do have to toggle with the graphics to get things a little bit smoother. I definitely had some issues running the game. Now, to be clear here, my computer or laptop as it is not not a beast of a machine by any regard. So it's definitely part my computer, part the game's optimization. Another thing you'll notice in the chat box is that as soon as you are brought into the world, you'll see nothing but endless spam about selling gold, which, although not a complete deal breaker, it's pretty immersion breaking, and I don't know, it's not a fun way to like get introduced to the community, because you can see that people are just like clearly also using the chat alongside the gold sellers, so they're just dealing with it, which, yeah, not great. In terms of combat, we have a tab targeting system. Certainly for the casters, this feels pretty normal, where you have kind of one bolt that's a instant cast, you have a different bolt that is another instant cast, and then you have a longer one that will slow or something like that. So you play with the different elements, and you get some different rewards for the different types of spells. It's a very traditional mage, and I do enjoy that. I think it's nice to have some classes that feel very similar to other MMOs, and I've mentioned that before in other games. I think one of the best things you can do is play on a class that you already know, because if you're doing that, you're going to be experiencing the other aspects of the game that make it feel unique, and I think that's a really great way to try out a class. You do get kind of a dodge roll mechanic, which is also really nice. I think that helps to make even tap targeting games feel a little bit more interesting. On the mage, it appears to be an actual teleport. On some of the other classes, it looks a bit different, but I think it's the same length and actual same like effect. It just has a different animation, but I haven't lined them up to completely see if that's the case or not. But yeah, so the main story here is that we see that the camp is on fire and we're going to go solve it. I mean, that's the broad strokes story of the initial area. You do get to try out a mount, so there are some mounts in this game. They ride pretty similarly to a lot of mounts. They just make it feel like you're going faster. You can click on quest objectives and it will auto path your way to it. Which is definitely something I'm seeing more and more in like newer released MMOs. I think that people like the idea of exploring big worlds, but don't actually like the idea of having to be there and pay attention for the entire travel, right? I don't know how I feel about it, but it's definitely something that's becoming more common. So we do go save our sister, and this weird gross big red ogre thing comes out, who's gonna chase the sister. And you know, from all I could tell with the size of this thing, you would assume that our sister could run quicker, but she, as you would expect, trips on the only stick that you could find, and the ogre is then gonna crush her, and everything gets crazy. So this lady teleports us into space, which, as a new player to the Final Fantasy Realm Reborn world, this looks very familiar in terms of cutscenes. Obviously, we're not talking to a big crystal, but a lot of this looks, like a very similar view, like just talking to the one person in space about the goings on of the universe. I felt similar vibes, and it's very pretty. Like, I do understand the beauty of using it. It's interesting that it feels very similar. But the lady who's talking to us there, she is an Astel. And those are the little minions we get. And this is kind of us learning about that process. A very cool, like some very cool cutscenes. I've got to give them that. It does look really nice. They've done a really good job of making the world feel very interesting in terms of how it interacts, and how the different people come into the story, which I think is good. But there definitely is a little bit of it's just very jarring from the actual gameplay, right? Like, if that makes sense. The cinematics feels super interesting and super good, and then you kind of have to putter through this not so great gameplay to get to the next cinematic. So I have just gone ahead and summoned my first Astel there. You saw it sort of pop on the right side of my screen, and you can see at the bottom right that I do have one of my companions summon, and by pushing the same button I use to summon her, I can use her special abilities. And as you would expect, you collect different Astels and they have different abilities, so it's likely that they'll become more useful in specific situations. This one is, I think, just kind of more of a damage dealer, but I also didn't take the time to read all of the different stats. You'll see, and I think I bring it up at a different time, that there is a whole big sort of manual where you can see all the different ones you can collect, and you could probably read about their different buffs and their different weaknesses and stuff like that. So it is a cool collection system as well. I feel like with a lot of things I've mentioned, unless balanced super properly, there's probably going to be an Astel that's best for damage, there's going to be an Astel that's best for tanking, and there's going to be an Astel that's best for healing. And it's unfortunate, but that's probably going to end up being how things are. But it is cool, and I think more than anything, it'll offer a lot of options in terms of the actual leveling experience and questing. And that's when, even in more established MMOs like WoW and Guild Wars 2, and Final Fantasy 14, where you see more of the different builds where people are able to explore a bit and try a few different skills and stuff like that. So I would assume we'll see more varied Astels in the leveling process, but once again, you might just use the most optimal one, and that might be what you choose to do. But yeah, so you can see here we have a cutscene that isn't as rendered as pretty, but it is still very nice. So I do think the cutscenes do a really good job of bringing beauty to the world. I think the game itself, actually, for being on Unreal Engine 3, looks really good. Graphically, it looks and holds with a lot of the current MMOs that are out there. I think the issue becomes some of the performance, right? And some of the limits that the actual engine has for gameplay and stuff like that. So there is a few issues that way, and it's hard to say if they would be able to resolve these. Obviously, the game is always a work in progress as an MMO, but I don't hold my breath to see anything great in terms of improvements for that, but we'll only see. So you can see now I do have the two different Astels that are summoned, and if I was being very good, I probably would be using their special actions, but as it is, I'm just casting my different spells. As a tutorial, it's pretty easy. Like, I just stood right in the attack there and didn't have any issues. And I think to a degree that's how tutorials should be, but as you would expect, we do, defeat kind of what we're trying to defeat, but it's not the end of the story. This is just sort of setting things up for the rest of the game. So I enjoy this. I think it's a really good tutorial system. I think it gives you a good feeling of how the game plays. Obviously, the second step to this that we haven't touched on in this video is what does the end game look like? What kind of group content is there? And how balanced is the game? Is there pay to win and all that? There is a lot more discussion there, and I've seen lots of videos on that already. I just really wanted to touch on what the new player experience looks like when you first step into the game, because there's only that one first impression you can make, and I think it's good that they do have this system like this to either give you that tutorial or to allow you to skip it. So very good on that part. But yeah, I think it's an MMO. It's nothing special, but it definitely ticks a lot of the boxes you would expect from an MMO. So if you just have nothing to play, it might be worth checking out. If you're someone who is enjoying the current game that they're playing, if you are having fun with your friends and stuff like that, I think you can probably wait and see what comes from this game in the future and just keep your eye on it. But I don't think it's something you need to rush and jump into. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. I'm looking forward to another Final Fantasy XIV video on the weekend, and I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that we do have a poll up on our community area of the channel, sort of talking about some of the content that we want to see more of in 2020, and there will be a video wrapping that up, and certainly a video near the end of 2019, just looking at how the year was as a YouTube channel, because this has been a really big year for me, and I'm very excited to kind of give you guys more of an inside look at that as well. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you are new here, please consider subscribing for some more MMO content, and if you enjoyed the video, toss it a like. But yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.